first of all, I just want to say welcome. So my name is Dave MacLeod. I'm the CEO of Thoughtexchange, and I am super happy to be, again, pushing the edge of what's possible. This is our first virtual workshop that we're doing. So we do events. We've expanded how we think about events. And as many or most of you know, we were just recently in Boston partnering with Masters of Scale and the amazing Wait What team, who just launched an incredible property today that you need to check out called Meditative Story. I'm going to plug it at the start and at the end. Meditative Story. Go on Spotify and go on however you get your podcast and check out Meditative Story from Wait What. You'll thank me later. But we just got back from Boston, where we had a chance to actually live in a theater with just under 1,000 people. We got to be a part of the Masters, first ever live Masters of Scale event. And what was really cool about that is that we got to actually use Thoughtexchange live with a group of people there. And what I spoke about there with that group was really that, well, frankly, as a person like me that actually gets slightly more relaxed in front of groups of people, I feel more confident talking than I do listening. It's my greatest strength to be a great talker, and my greatest weakness is that my ability to listen is always challenged by my strength in being able to talk a lot. And so while we were getting together in Boston, we actually did a live exchange, and in this exchange, we effectively crowdsourced all the things that we do when we're at our absolute worst as leaders. Because isn't it interesting that we can actually talk about what we do amazingly well, but the other thing we can do is actually talk about the sort of things that we do when maybe we're not so amazing. And so today, in this sort of first of its kind workshop, I promised a special guest, and as you see him creeping around here, it's Martin Williams. He'll get an introduction in a second. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to share my screen, because I would actually like to show you the results of what happens when you ask a group of people a hard question, which is really, what are the things that we do when we're at our absolute worst as leaders? So first of all, I'm just going to kind of show you the net result of this conversation rolling out in front of you, because oftentimes as a leader, there's another thing that happens, and I spoke about this briefly in Boston, is that, see, actually what you're looking at happen right now is this is literally an exchange happening in front of your eyes. This is the replay of what happened when we were all together in Boston. You can see there were hundreds of people, and they're all sharing thoughts and considering the thoughts of one another about what makes us terrible. Now, why would we do that? Why would we actually crowdsource? I jokingly called it shame sourcing. Why would we share all the things that we do when we're really at our worst as leaders? Well, I guess as far as this workshop is concerned, what we really want to talk about is this notion of actually figuring out what a blind spot might be. And as a leader, being willing to actually look into those places that we might not be willing every day to admit what our blind spots are, so that we can actually take a chance to gander into that abyss, see ourselves at our worst, so we might be able to open up some opportunity to take that worst version of ourselves and maybe turn it into something that's just a little bit better. So this is really the exchange that happened. It's quite beautiful to watch. This is hundreds and hundreds of people live. If you can picture a theater filled with people, and they're all sitting there rating the thoughts of all the things they do, and they're at their most terrible. And a really interesting thing happens, and we're going to dig into this later, but as I've done this a number of times now, as you get some amazing leaders, this room was packed full of amazing leaders, all of a sudden when they're sitting there sharing what's worst about themselves, an interesting thing happens in a room. People actually start giggling a little bit, and they start laughing actually, as they start to see that maybe they're not alone in all these terrible things they're doing. And so in today's workshop, what I want to do is actually want to run through some of these things that came up to the top as sort of the worst things we do ourselves when we're at our worst as leaders. So that's, as this visualization plays out, eventually it turns into something quite lovely that you can see. I think I opened up a version here. It's like the cooking show where where you can see here at the end, you can actually, here's all the thoughts, here's what rose up to the top, and all sorts of fantastic categories like impatience and defensiveness and frustration and domination. And yet a couple of thoughts came up near the top here. And so right up at the top is a few notions that I want to dig into in this workshop today. The number 1 and 2 here is really this notion of doing it all by myself, being a bit short with people. So in Thoughtexchange, all the thoughts get seen by everyone, then they get rated up to the top. But there was a really interesting piece that came out around being short with people, going out and hiding out by myself, etc., that I want to dig into a little bit, because as I looked into this exchange, I'm going to show you something, but I'm going to actually get you to put in the chat. These are some things that came up to the top. That's interesting, but I'm going to dig in just a little bit further, because I want to actually show you something here with that's going to lead up to what we're about to do with Martin. This is something where there's 2 lines of thoughts here. And what I want you to do is look at them carefully. The group on the left was rated pretty high by one group of people, one type of rater, if you will, and where group B rated all these thoughts differently. They rated them all very low, 1-star rating, 1.4, where you can see here group A rated them really high. Over here, group A gave these thoughts terrible ratings, where group B gave these thoughts really high ratings. So I'm just going to scroll down, just read the thoughts on the left. It was like a slow aha for me figuring out. So the question was, what do you do when you're at your absolute worst? You can see these thoughts on the left. There's people that are like, nope, I never do that. And people are like, yep, I always do that. And then there's this group of thoughts on the right that one side says, yep, absolutely. The other side says never. Can someone in the chat be brave and say, well, what are you seeing in there? What are the difference? What's the thoughts on the left? And what's the thoughts on the right? Can I see a few people on the, actually just start with the left. What sort of people are sharing those thoughts? Why are these thoughts in a group? Maybe ask that question that way. Someone, this is what I call the brave souls element of a workshop. Come on, someone be brave. Thank you. One is about me and all the other. Proactiveness on the left-hand side, fantastic. Group, they look more like servant leaders. Thank you. Productive actions. Maybe optimists. Accepting failure and celebrating. Those are great answers. Okay, let's, so the question is, what do you do when you're at your absolute worst? And they're saying, I take a break and allows me to reboot. But the people on the right here are like, nope, I don't do that. I do these things. What do they do? What are the people on the right? Maybe just people who have all more experience being leaders fall into that more. Yeah, possibly. That's a good answer. There's no wrong answers here. What's on the right? What are these sort of? Yeah, the growth mindset on the left. That's great. What's on the right? Bullish. Yeah. Reactionary. Yeah. Aggression, very good. Distraction, assertiveness, yeah, fantastic. Mr. Haga. I'll be brave. I'll also say maybe there's a bit more rawness on the right. Yeah, emotion, that's good. Rawness and saying, yeah, this is actually, you know what, when I'm at my worst, I don't do any of those things on the left. I never actually take a break. When I'm at my worst, I'm rigid, I'm terrible. But here's what I want to drive into is that there's people, yeah, there's people being in survival on the right-hand side and people saying, actually, no, I'm willing to actually be in creative on the left-hand side. So people are perceiving themselves differently when they're at their worst. But I thought it was really interesting. Well, one, let's go to this. This one's just kind of funny. I'm going to go to both sides rated these thoughts really low. Both thoughts rated these low. I'm a cheese-eating chipperoo because cheese is amazing. Okay, we don't have to talk that one. But I really got a kick out of that thought. And the turtle thought. However, there's some thoughts here. Envy my direct reports, delegate for opportunity, need to focus more on end idea, learn to scale, fire a person on the spot. Maybe that'll fix the frustration. I got a kick out of all these thoughts. So the people that rated all those thoughts high and low, they agree that they don't like these thoughts. So that's fine. They say these thoughts, nobody here in this, only this one person fires people on the spot. It didn't resonate. But now I want to go and actually just want to put it into the common thoughts rated high. So whether or not you're sort of more open, more in sort of creative brain or not, on the common thoughts rated high, these are thoughts that really resonated with both sides. I'm just going to scroll down, and then I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to ask a brave soul or 10 to go through and say, what's the theme in here? What are the thoughts that resonate across all these different categories? Yeah, I like it. Control. I'll do it myself. Me focus. That's good. Disappearing into yourself. Fantastic. Fret, fret, fret. I'm the leader. I have to solve this by myself. I can do by myself. Isn't that amazing that actually, so regardless of if you consider yourself sort of able to go through your creative brain and able to actually solve challenges, we're willing to admit that actually, even in those moments, actually, I'm willing to say that I'm a bit of a micromanager. I take on too much. I go by myself. This is something that really relates to a lot of people. So I'm going to go into the next piece, and I'm going to actually get you to take a look. And I'd like you to just, this is going to be a quick game. This is actually just the machine learning theming, just put these in groups and categories. So themes like stop, listen, and think. Things think, thanks to our machine learning grouper. What I'd like to do is the first person to go in, tell me one of these categories you'd like me to open up. What would you like to, which one of these would you like to see the thoughts inside? Take on too much. Command and control. I just take over and do the work myself. Ooh, this person takes advice someone. That's rare. That's great. I'm going to go through a few more. I saw defensiveness in there. Defensive ideas. I get defensive. I become defensive. Great leaders will not play the blame game. The short and curt and defensive. I get defensive. I communicate less. I'm going to go through a few more. Critical. Where are you, critical? Critical. Get very critical. I get impatient and overly critical. I be critical. So the beauty, I think, is that as the lightness and levity that comes from actually looking at these is the relatedness is that, wow, these are actually really amazing leaders from around the world, and they feel that way. Maybe I'm not so alone in this. I'm going to do one more, which is micromanage. Micromanage trust. I'm anxious and I'm worried and feel the need to be in control. I micromanage because I think I can do it the best by myself. I micromanage my team. I micromanage, I micromanage, I micromanage, I micromanage. A lot of micromanagers being people in here. So I thought this was pretty cool and also pretty self-aware for people to be able to actually source the sort of things that they do. And then what we did live in the event is we actually had people turn and share. I'll share this report back out with everybody, by the way, with some commentary. I thought it was pretty cool. For this workshop, when we were live in Boston, we were able to do something kind of cool, which was turn to our partner and actually have a conversation about what it takes to transform ourselves from the worst version of ourselves to the best version of ourselves. In today's presentation, what I'm actually going to do is our special guest is my dear friend, Martin Williams. And some of you have met and know Martin Williams, and some of you have not met and do not know Martin Williams. But I've known Martin now for a number of years. Martin works alongside the company, and he comes to our events and presents on live events. He presented an event yesterday. But Martin is here to actually introduce himself quickly, and he's going to do kind of a 5 minutes of fame about this idea of ourself at our worst and the transformation to us at our best. And just to give you a little hint of what we're going to do afterwards, we're actually going to crowdsource at the end of this some ways to get to our best. So there's a participatory part coming up. Martin Williams, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So from worst to best is in a few minutes, okay? So as Dave explained, I've spent many years guiding extreme expeditions around the world, working with a whole range of society, from billionaires to kids off the street in Vancouver, all sorts of situations. You know, I've guided on Everest, led expeditions to the North Pole, started an airline in Antarctica, And then having done all that, I've worked on leadership programs in North America, but then I went off to India and spent 7 years meditating and teaching meditation and doing bizarre things like this. Was actually meditating in a ring of fire for a couple of hours each day. And so that was, obviously this gave me some interesting insights on life all this time. So one of the key insights I wanted to share with you is that one of the expeditions I did was from the North Pole to the South Pole. It was a 9-month journey with the young people. And we were all looking forward to bicycling in Ecuador, right? Beautiful scenery, temperatures perfect, gorgeous roads. But when we got there, somebody could be having a lousy day. It could be that their socks were smelly, that their friend insulted them. So we can be in the most gorgeous place in the world and have a lousy day. Conversely, in Antarctica at -40, walking into a headwind, we can have a great day. So life is actually the inner game that we're playing of just, it's not the external that decides how we are in life, but it's the internal space, okay? So then in terms of how does that relate to worst to best? What I saw is that we can flip from worst to the best super fast, okay? So one of the top thoughts was being short with people. So I thought we'd look at that one from this context. And so here's this lady, making the help sign for the airplane. Meanwhile, the boat's passing and she's saying, I'm too busy. So again, just being short with people, not listening, right? And so what I see is what she is doing and what we are doing when we're being short with people is what I would call being in survival brain. And survival brain is when we're being super protective, where we're either fighting, we're flighting, we're out of there, or we're frozen, okay, and literally try to disappear in the wall. And really, survival brain is highly protective. We look at the world through the lens of protection of self, which ties in with some of the comments earlier about self versus others, right? On the other hand, creative brain is when the ultimate form of creative brain is when we be in athletic flow, when we're solution solving, when we're enthusiastic, when we're dynamic, when we're being proactive, when we're looking at ways to solve issues. So then let's come back to this whole thing of being short with people. And it could well be that what the trigger is there is a survival brain time trigger. And so in survival brain time is a curse. There's never enough of it. I'm stressed by time. I have to be short with people because there's not enough time, right? And that is our default way of being. And when we have something like being short with people, it'll be a pattern. We will have been doing it for 5 or 10 years and we'll continue on doing it for the next 20 or 30 years unless we catch the pattern. So we're in survival brain, it's a pattern, okay? So on the other hand, if we were to move into creative brain is when time is a game I play with. So I say in 6 months I want to do this. No, actually I can do it in 4 months. We're now playing with time. And time is a pleasure that we enjoy playing with. So survival brain, time is a curse. Creative brain, time is a game. Okay, everybody got these basic ideas? So what will happen though with the survival brain is that we'll stay in the pattern, we'll repeat the pattern over and over and over. So the whole idea of being short with people, we will have done it for 10 years, we'll continue to do it. So then what we have to do then is understand we're in a pattern, I'm in a survival brain pattern, how do we get out of it? So when we're in that pattern, literally we see the world differently. We don't see everything that's possible for ourselves. So for instance, this lady here is saying, that is a neat looking car, right? She's stuck in the perception of, I know what cars are, this is a car. I know what time is, it stresses me out, right? So she has a limiting cognition, unlimited cognition. So I'll give you another example. Anytime we say, I always get, stressed by, we're in a limiting cognition. We're immediately locking the box around us and with zero possibility. Whereas in creative brain, we access possibility, right? So then, first of all, then we have to catch the survival brain. We have to catch the limited cognition. And we have to break the pattern of operating in those limiting cognitions, which will keep us walking forward blindfolded in life, right? So in this particular case, sure, with people, it could very well come from the whole idea of not enough time. I'm sure with people because I don't have enough time, right? And we repeat this, oh, there's not enough time to listen to people. We'll say this to our friends, we'll say this to our co-workers, et cetera, et cetera. This is a fact, right? There's not enough time, and it's a solid fact. But really, if we flip it right around, what would be an expanded cognition? It would be something like, I enjoy saving time by clearly listening and explaining. So typically, when we're short with people, we're not getting the full story, we're cutting them off, we're not getting all the information, so we have to repeat. So actually, we're taking more time in the long run, right? So if we move into the expanded cognition, I enjoy saving time, clearly listening and explaining, then it is literally a shift. So once we get it, I've seen people do this time and again, they go, oh, I got it, and they immediately act it out. So next time they go into a conversation, they listen differently, et cetera, et cetera. So this can create an instant shift from survival to creative, from worst to best, right? So just by having this understanding, oh, that was limited survival brain, what is my expanded creative brain? Oh, good, I got it, let me go with it. That can happen sometimes. Other times, we may have to look at it for just a little while. So for instance, one option there would be on the way to work or the next couple of days, say to yourself, oh, my survival brain is, I don't have enough time to listen. Let's shift that into creative brain of I'm enjoying saving time and clearly listening and explaining. And do that a few times, then we'll start saying to our coworkers, oh yeah, I actually really enjoy listening to people. And it will become our default. So what can happen quite rapidly is we can go from one default, survival brain, limited cognition, to the other default, which is expanded cognition. And so in survival brain, we're unconsciously muttering, right? And our friends will hear it, our coworkers will hear it, we'll hear it ourselves. And in creative brain, we're taking conscious action. So then the whole idea is catch the survival, switch to expanded, and then implement. Okay? Thank you, Dave. Over back to you.
Martin, I was just saying thank you very much. I always appreciate hearing stories and insights from you. And I also want to make a bit of a transition right now. So I really do believe in the importance of leadership and the importance of people to be able to actually put a new idea into someone. And I'm also really working to take this idea of loud leadership and talk about the transformation into crowd leadership. So you've heard some insights of us at our worst. You've heard Martin talk about this transformation from survival brain to creative brain. And what I'm going to do now is actually, we're going to go into a crowd leadership model where actually the crowd has a lot to learn and teach one another itself, as it were, and you are a part of that crowd. And so what we're going to do, again, this is a workshop, and by workshop, it means we're trying new things. We're going to put a link into the into Zoom right now. And there's a couple things to it. One is it's using our brand new scrolling interface. So if you have any thoughts on that, this is still in beta. So I'll be able to show you some beta things, but you can go through, click on that link, and please go and share a thought about the sort of things you do that we all need to do to be able to go from this worst version of ourselves rapidly into the best version of ourselves. And so I'm going to take 6 or 7 minutes because I'd love a chance for everybody who's on this call to actually share a thought or two and then consider and rate thinking of at least 10 or 20 other people who are here. Try to do as many as you can in the time. And then we're going to take a look at the sort of things. We're going to do a crowd leadership moment after our loud leadership moment. And for those of you on the call that are extroverts like myself, the next thing I'm going to do is actually be quiet for a few minutes, where we have the chance to actually just consider and think together as a group and learn from one another without someone with a microphone speaking your ear off the whole time. So without further ado, I'm going to be quiet for the next couple of minutes while people share and rate. All right, I'm going to head over here and I'm going to press close the exchange. And now I'm going to head back here. And so we did well. We did very well in this exchange. We have all sorts of fantastic thinking. So what I want to do actually is just do a quick tour through the sort of thoughts that people are sharing here and the things that have come up as the most important. All right, so I'm actually going to run this tour by first just sort of letting us know, and I will share some of these things back. And I will ask Martin for a comment in just a second on a few of these, but I want to do a crowd tour first. Assuming positive attention, listening for understanding, instead of waiting for a chance to talk. Yeah. Practicing generous assumptions, holding your tongue before you speak, and explore what you're feeling and the consequences. Get curious. Apologize with grace. I'm just going to scroll down some more. All right, now let's play the differences game just for a second. This is all very workshopy. I don't, there is no pre-baked cake here. I'm actually going to go. Let's talk about this one. What's the similarity between these sort of thoughts? And then what are the reasons why some people are rating them high and some people aren't? So maybe just have a few people type into the chat here. Activity, doing, taking a minute, listening to your favorite song. Any other thoughts? So there's a physical do nature here. Let's go to the common ratings high. Someone type in what's important about the common ground here. Yeah, thanks. Receptivity, listening and assumptions. Generosity, fantastic. And doing something active helps. Yeah, I think there's a pretty big shift happening right now across organizations that are all pretty interesting. Let's go to one, let's go to group number 3 here. Get back to work. I don't have to ask what the similarities are there. Get back to work. Sometimes I need to just get out of my head, get back to work. Some people are like, yep, that's what I need. Some people are like, nope, I can't. But the same common ground here seems quite similar between these two groups. Thanks, Vicky. All right, so we're just going to end with looking at a few of these themes together of the sort of thing. So anybody, the machine is taking a swipe at this. Anybody put in a theme that you'd like to look at here? Some brave soul. Admit issues. Thank you. Only one thought on that theme. It's difficult to get change if you don't realize there's an issue. Listen. Get curious. Listen more. Understand other points of view. Acknowledge goal setting. I like it. Love this. So we can crowdsource the things we're terrible at. We can crowdsource the things we're amazing at. Martin, I'll just open it up for comment about what you see that's interesting and what's risen up at the top here. 1 minute comment.
Okay, I guess one was, I really like the one of turn into Hulk. I don't know, just it just struck me as really, good to just recognize when, oh, I am being the Hulk, or whatever terminology works for you to bring awareness into the moment. I'm not myself. Basically, I'm not myself. How do I get back to being myself? So I think that is really a key piece for me in this. And then the other one is a lot of the comments are about generosity, aren't they? And about really being unconstrained in one's listening, a much more open style of listening, much more generous style of listening than is commonly practiced. I guess those two things for me stand out.
That's great. Thanks, Martin. I'm not actually going to go on mute though, so I don't get your echo at the end of it. Perfect. Well, thanks everybody. So I just want to end with a couple of things. One is that I'm actually going to have a chance to share back some of these results. So thank you for crowdsourcing the sort of things that we can do. I also promised that I'd bookend because I thought it was really interesting that Wait What putting out Meditative Story, sponsored by Salesforce.com, that actually is putting a stake in the ground to say mindfulness and equality and the ability to treat each other in a mindful way as a leader is actually something that the most successful organizations in the world stand for. Is fantastic. There's a major shift happening in organizations around the world right now, and we're just happy to be a part of it. And so we just want to encourage you you saw what we did here, just have a conversation with people about the things that they do. What we do when we're at our most terrible is actually a super powerful conversation. Just want to invite you as a leader to actually allow people to not just share the positive things, but actually share concerns, share the struggles that people are having, and be able to crowdsource that. And the notion of actually sharing the sort of things that we can do is a powerful idea. And that actually the crowd has some super interesting ways of being able to solve this. It's really more about learning from each other than it is about trying to lead from the top. The final thing I want to leave you with is that at Thoughtexchange, we're sure leaning into events, and I want to share this with you because this just got launched on our site, where you can actually go to thoughtexchange.com right now and you can see events that are happening. There's now a calendar, and as you can see, this calendar is actually starting to fill up. So this is the July calendar. If you head over to August, you'll notice some interesting things. Martin is back at the end of August talking about transformational leadership. There's some Women in Leadership event series. There's an amazing series coming up with Chris Whaley. There's some awesome virtual events and face-to-face events coming up that we just invite you to share these, be a part of them. If you have people that want to understand the process or people that just want to get an uplift, we really aim to make sure that these events are uplifting. I also want to do a quick plug for, along with having Innovative Women in Leadership, we're having a face-to-face in Vancouver about transformation, where we're getting together leaders for a couple of days face-to-face. So if you want information on that, please learn. But most of all, you can come here now and just send people here. It's really an open ability to get here and talk about the things that we can do to help lift us up as move forward as leaders. So thank you everybody for doing two things: coming and participating in this live virtual workshop. Magnificent that you were here, and also being willing to try our new beta software and beta way of crowdsourcing things like this. I just so appreciate the community when it comes together to be able to do that sort of thing. So any last words from you, Martin?
No, I think you've summarized it, Dave. I just was really impressed by the comments coming through on the exchanges. It was really super high quality stuff, so great.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone. Thanks for coming out, and we'll hopefully see you at an upcoming event. Take care.